the institutional reforms, which hinge very closely on social protection. That's the thing that I would sort of dwell in. I'll start with decentralization, which was reform to sort of bring the programs and interventions closer to the local authorities. And this, we did it to ensure that the programs are managed at a local level, and the people are much more in decision making, the local people, we mean. But it has not been easy to implement decentralization. We've had a number of workshops for the staff involved in implementing the programs, the social protection programs. Also, the local authorities, to try and sensitize them, bring them up to speed with what the programs they're going to assume or to be doing. The major challenge has been that there is always resistance to change. I think that's human nature. And some people are scared to sort of embrace new ideas. They start thinking, oh, now my job is going to be taken away. Or they start feeling that they are not adequately trained for the sort of interventions. But for me, I would tell you that I'm an ardent supporter of decentralization. So I was part of the major player in spearheading this. The other transformational reform that I participated in was the public service reforms, to try and change the thinking of public service servants, and to try and inculcate effective service delivery in the many players in the civil service. The challenges that you find in there is you find the number of transfers that can occur. Yes, you can train this province and think that you have done a good job, but before you know it, that skill is required somewhere else. And the moment you move the skill, then you have you are back to square one. You employ probably a fresh person from the university, and they need to learn new things. So the constant change, the attrition rather, is what affects most of the reforms. With regard to social protection programs such as social cash transfers, we had invested quite a lot of training in the staff. And when you have attrition, either by movement because they are now promoted, or just death, in case of death, and then you have new people, you find that you still need to go back and do some other retraining, or just in-house retraining, or ensuring that the reforms that you have sort of put in are taken on board by the new team. The other thing that I would look at is the inability for the seculars from the central government to the districts. For a secular from cabinet office to reach the districts, it takes long. So you may be thinking, okay, we are implementing reforms and we're actually on the right path. But to understand those reforms, I was just listening to Parliament yesterday, and one MP was saying, look, we have been talking about decentralization, and yet the district commissioners and the council chairpersons don't even know their roles. And yet there's been a circular which was issued a long time ago, and this parliamentarian doesn't even know, or she didn't know. And the reason is simple. It's the flow of information. Okay, reform has been instituted, but flow of information is lagging behind. So you find that as a challenge. Instead of government service delivery manner, you do it like a project. You should have deadlines. All the districts should have this information by such and such a date, and someone should be held accountable, for not disseminating the information. I'll tell you about the time we had mother and child health, and I would go to some of the districts, and we had sent out, say, materials for a certain program to ensure that it is disseminated to the local clinics and hospitals. You find everything is still piling in the district office, and so information is not flowing. You have spent the money here at the central level, and yet it's not reaching the intended people. Those are some of the things I found not only interesting but challenging. Yes, you have to find a way of going around it. And I remember what we used to do sometimes is to make sure that we take along ourselves some of the documents, because we may go further than the district does. And that is just because maybe the district has got no finances to go to these other remote areas, far to reach areas. I'll tell you also about the social protection policy. Just the document itself to get to the intended users. You find that it's taken long, or you find it marooned at a district. And then you ask the district, why are you keeping, we couldn't have transport and all that. So you see there are so many other things that you have to look at. So if you design it in a project like manner, I think then institutional reform would have more impact. There are ways that attrition can also be arrested. Okay, provide for, say, 3-year period. If I'm saving in a certain district, a 3-year period is good enough for me to sort of understand the whole district, and if there has to be movement, ensure that there's someone of similar skill and similar understanding of the program or whatever we are implementing, if it's reforms, to sort of replace. There are also ways of doing it to have someone to understudy the person who is going to move. Not where you're just told, okay, tomorrow you are moving. And the place becomes vacant for some time, and there's no one to understudy the person's responsibilities, roles and responsibilities. But if you have, say, 6 months of someone trying to give out the information that, look, as I go, this is what we have been implementing. The catchment area here is such and such, and the people that we are targeting are... The one who is going to take over will have a good chance of implementing exactly the same things we have been doing. Yes, I think that there are a few things that need to be taken into account regarding institutional reforms that we learned. One, we learned the fact that awareness raising is very important. There are several ways of doing it. And also that if you don't raise awareness, anything that you introduce that is going to change what has been status quo, people have got mixed feelings. Sometimes genuinely so, because they don't fully understand, and not all people are risk takers. Some of them are in comfort zones and they want to sort of fully understand what is going on before they also come and swim along. So awareness raising is important. Bringing everyone on board through different fora. You can have workshops. You can have even just focus group discussions of these experts. Because yes, they may be experts, but introducing change is something else. because they'll be thinking, what is in it for me? And where do I find myself? Am I going to lose my job? And the fear usually in Africa is the loss of employment. That's usually the fear. So if you can assure the people that, look, the reforms that we are doing are to actually enhance your service delivery, are actually to ensure that you are more relevant to the community that you are serving, then people understand and feel comfortable and get to relax and say, look, let's go along with these institutional reforms. Some of the reforms, let's say you are going to promote people and then or scale down these top-heavy structures. People start feeling jittery. Am I losing my job? And all that. But when they understand that, look, at the end of the day, we want to streamline service delivery so that it's effective, it's efficient, and we need to have impact, then people sort of see it and agree. Now, to do that, you need to have these lessons that we learned of awareness raising, bringing everyone on board, ensuring that if there's need for training, take them for training. Always attach a good budget to it. That is one of the lessons that I learned. There are a lot of reforms, and we are still grappling with decentralization now. The reason is simple. There's no budget to it. For as long as you don't have a budget, how are you going to sensitize all these people? How are they going to know that, look, to bring, let's say, social cash transfers, to be understood by a district and the district to be able to carry on the selection criteria that has been set at the national level and to make sure that it's uniform countrywide, you need resources. And these resources are important, even for information communication, to be able to respond to their queries when they get stuck. Respond in good time. As you bring in reform, understand those differences of the way the district structures are. Right now, we are thinking of, we are grappling with new districts. And go to Mitete, for instance. Yes, you find a district that is already existing on paper, but the actual district or infrastructure is not there. So you can't treat them the same way as you're going to treat Lusaka. They have to have a different approach in the way you bring them together, in the way they understand the reform. Because for them, they'll be grappling with, we are just starting. We are just in our formative stage. Then you want us to start thinking of getting on more responsibilities, of trying to implement cash transfers, women empowerment, food security programs. They start asking themselves those questions because they feel inadequate. So for such a district, first you have to look at what is the staff complement. Do we have enough people to run these programs or to institute these reforms? So you treat them differently, but arriving at the same outcome. A lot of institutional reforms, well intended, but if you put them on the shelf, I don't think they can be effective. I mean, because they are for the shelf. Implement. The idea is implement the intended reforms. If we put them on the shelf, then they are no good. I think other countries can learn from that. We have grappled with that. We have had a lot of reforms from 1964. And some of them are just on the shelf. Nothing much has happened. The other thing that I can tell other countries to look out for is reforms that are implemented in silos. Government reform should be government-wide because it affects all sectors. Now, if you implement them in silos, you find one sector is moving faster than the other. And if you're not well coordinated, then you lose the intended purpose and intended reform outcomes. And so you start asking yourself, why isn't this what you call public service reforms, why aren't they working? But it's simple, because the other sector is thinking differently, health is thinking differently, agriculture is thinking different. But if it's coordinated, then it's easier. And how do we make coordination effective? Is it to raise it, the coordination level to cabinet office, for instance? And because cabinet office, then you are talking of the secretary to cabinet, who has a supervisory role on all the permanent secretaries, which becomes much more easier.